"Tonight I'm going out with the girls, my girlfriend told me." I replied, "So girls' night means sitting on someone's lap and kissing him like that, huh?" Then I grabbed my suitcase and left the country that same night. I'm Matthias, 32, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew the woman I shared my life with. Carla was everything I'd always looked for. Intelligent, ambitious, beautiful. We'd been together for 4 years. We lived in an apartment we paid for half and half in the center of Madrid, and we'd started talking seriously about marriage. I thought I'd finally found my person. That Friday night started like many others. Carla informed me during breakfast that she'd be going out with her work friends. "Girls' night out," she said with that smile that melted me. "We need to vent after this horrible week at the office." I was happy for her to go out and have fun. I'd always been a boyfriend who valued personal space and independence. I was never jealous or controlling, characteristics Carla said she adored about me. I kissed her on the forehead and told her to have fun. I planned a quiet night, ordering Thai food, watching a series I had pending, and maybe making progress on the freelance project I'd gotten that week. Around 9 p.m., as I was eating pad Thai directly from the container, my phone vibrated with an Instagram notification. It was a story from Laura, one of Carla's best friends. Curiously, it wasn't a picture of the girls gathered at some bar as I expected. It was a selfie of Laura with her boyfriend with the caption, "Movie night at home with my love." I frowned. Laura wasn't supposed to be on the girls' night out. Maybe she'd changed her plans. I didn't give it much thought and kept eating, but something was gnawing at me, that uncomfortable feeling in my stomach that has nothing to do with spicy food. I opened Instagram again and checked the stories of Carla's other friends. Sophia had posted pictures of a family dinner. Patricia was at the gym. None of them were on a supposed girls' night out. The pad Thai started to taste like cardboard in my mouth. With slightly trembling hands, I opened Carla's profile. She hadn't posted any stories yet, which wasn't unusual when she went out, as she usually did it at the end of the night. But I decided to check recent posts. Nothing out of the ordinary. Pictures of us, together, landscapes, food, everything normal, everything a perfect lie, as I'd discover minutes later. That's when I saw a strange notification. Someone had tagged me in a post, but the app took a second to load. When it finally appeared on the screen, my world stopped. It was a photo posted on an account I didn't recognize, but it was clearly from some kind of event or gathering. And there, in the center of the image, was Carla. She wasn't with her friends. She was sitting on the lap of a man I recognized immediately. Diego, her ex-boyfriend. The photo had been taken in what looked like a bar with dim lights and an intimate atmosphere. Carla had her head resting on Diego's shoulder. Her arms were around his neck, and they were both smiling at the camera with that look of complicity that only people who share something more than friendship have. But what really shattered me wasn't the photo itself, but the caption that accompanied it. "Some flames never quite go out," with a fire emoji and a red heart. My first instinct was to deny what my eyes were seeing. It had to be a misunderstanding, an old photo, a misleading angle. But the more I looked at the details, the more evidence I found that this was happening in real time. Carla was wearing the new blouse she'd bought just 3 days ago, the one she'd excitedly shown me saying she'd wear it soon. On her wrist, I recognized the watch I'd given her on our 3rd anniversary. There was no doubt. This betrayal was happening while I was eating Thai food in our apartment. Trusting her blindly, I checked who'd posted the photo. The account belonged to a certain Javier, apparently a friend of Diego's. According to the tags, I started checking that account's stories and found more evidence. Videos from the same bar, loud music, people dancing. And in one of those videos, just 3 seconds long, I captured the exact moment I saw Carla and Diego kissing. It wasn't an accidental or friendly kiss. It was a passionate kiss, the kind of kiss you give when you think no one important is watching. I felt like I'd been hit in the chest with a hammer. The air left my lungs, and for a moment I thought I was going to throw up. For years of relationship, for years of trusting her, of building together, of planning a future. It was all a farce. The infidelity wasn't the only thing that hurt, it was the lies. How long had this been going on? How many other girls' nights out had actually been secret encounters with her ex? I shot up from the sofa as if on springs. The food container fell to the floor, spilling noodles and sauce everywhere, but I didn't care. I paced the living room, my mind racing, trying to process the betrayal. I could call her, confront her, demand explanations. I could wait for her to come home and face her in person. I could break things, scream, cry. All those options swirled in my head like a chaotic whirlwind. But then, in the midst of that emotional hurricane, I felt something different, a cold, calculating clarity I'd never experienced before. I didn't want to scream or cry. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me destroyed. I didn't want to hear her pathetic excuses or her attempts at manipulation. I wanted something much simpler and more definitive. I wanted to disappear. I went to our bedroom and pulled the large suitcase from the closet. With mechanical but efficient movements, I started packing. Clothes for 2 weeks, toiletries, my laptop, important documents, all the essentials. As I packed, my mind worked in parallel, planning every detail of my escape. It wasn't just an emotional impulse, it was a survival strategy. I checked my phone and opened my bank app. I had considerable savings, money I'd been putting away for the down payment on a house Carla and I had been dreaming of buying. How ironic that this money would now serve to escape from her. I transferred half the balance from our joint account to my personal account. Not all of it, because I wasn't a thief, unlike her who'd stolen 4 years of my life, just what was rightfully mine. Then I called my best friend Roberto. It was almost 10 p.m., but I knew he'd be awake. He answered on the second ring. "Man, what's up?" he asked in his usual relaxed tone. "Roberto, I need you to do me a favor and not ask any questions until tomorrow," I said in a voice that sounded strangely calm, even to me. There was a pause. Roberto knew me well enough to detect something serious was happening. "Tell me what you need. Come pick me up at the apartment in 30 minutes. Take me to the airport, and if Carla contacts you asking about me, you don't know anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he replied without hesitation. That's a true friend. While I waited, I finished packing and wrote a note. Not a long, emotional letter, not a manifesto of pain or accusations. Just 5 words on a piece of paper that I left on the kitchen table. "I saw your Instagram. Good luck." Short, direct, devastating in its simplicity. I took my passport from the drawer where we kept important documents. Luckily, I kept it updated because my work as a freelance graphic designer occasionally required travel. I opened the flight booking app on my phone and searched for the first available flight out of Madrid that night. I didn't care about the destination. I just needed to leave. There was a flight to Lisbon leaving at 2 a.m. Portugal, a nearby but different country, a place where I could think clearly, without the risk of running into Carla or people we knew. I bought the ticket without a second thought, €500 one way. The price of my freedom. Roberto arrived exactly 20 minutes later as promised. He opened the apartment door with the emergency key I'd given him years ago and found me sitting on the sofa, suitcase by my side, completely serene on the outside, though inside I was a volcano of contained emotions. "Matthias," he began to say, but I raised my hand. "Later, man, please, just take me to the airport now." Roberto nodded, took my suitcase, and we left the apartment. I closed the door behind me without looking back. As we went down in the elevator, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Carla. "My love, is everything okay? I miss you. The girls and I are having an amazing time. Haha, I love you." I read the message without any emotion. The lies flowed so naturally from her. The girls and I. Pure fiction, pure deceit. I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots of all the Instagram stories I'd seen, of the photo with Diego, of the video of the kiss. I saved them on my phone, not for revenge, but as a reminder of why I was doing this. In the car on the way to the airport, Roberto finally broke the silence. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" I showed him the screenshots without a word. I watched as his expression went from curiosity to disbelief and finally to rage. "That damn," he started to say, but I cut him off. "It's not worth it, Roberto. I've already made my decision. I'm going to Lisbon for a while. I need physical and emotional distance to process this. And the apartment, your work, your things? The apartment's in both our names. She can have it or sell it. I don't care. My work is freelance. I can do it from anywhere in the world. My things are just objects. The only thing I'm taking is my dignity, and that's priceless." Roberto was silent for a moment before speaking again. "You're stronger than you look, man. Many guys in your place would be destroyed, making scenes, looking for confrontation. Believe me, I'm destroyed inside, but I've learned something in these 32 years of life. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Carla showed me she's capable of betrayal and deceit. I don't need a second demonstration. We arrived at Adolfo Suarez Madrid Barajas Airport around 11:30 p.m. Roberto helped me with my suitcase and gave me a strong hug before I went into the terminal. Take care, man, and call me when you get to Lisbon, just to know you're okay. I will. And Roberto, thanks for not asking unnecessary questions. I owe you a big one. You don't owe me anything. That's what friends are for. As I walked through the airport terminal, dragging my suitcase, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Pain. Obviously, Carla's betrayal had cut through me like a knife. But I also felt something else. Liberation. It was as if for 4 years I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know existed, and now I'd finally been freed from it. I checked in at one of the automated kiosks, checked my bag, and went through security without any issues. The airport at that hour had a surreal atmosphere, half empty, with fluorescent lights that made everything seem unreal. I sat in the waiting area near the boarding gate, and for the first time since I'd seen that photo, I allowed myself to take a deep breath. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Carla had sent 3 more messages, all with the same cheerful and carefree tone of someone who has no idea their world is about to collapse. I didn't answer them. Instead, I opened my email and started doing something I should have done a long time ago, reviewing our shared finances with a critical eye. I discovered something that chilled my blood more than the infidelity itself. For the past 6 months, Carla had been withdrawing small amounts from our joint account. Never enough for me to notice in my casual monthly reviews, but added up they amounted to almost 3,000 euros. 300 here, 500 there. And according to the withdrawal descriptions, many had been at ATMs near Diego's neighborhood. The betrayal wasn't recent. This had been going on for half a year, maybe more. Every time she kissed me, every time she told me, "I love you," every time we talked about our future together, she was lying. The rage I'd been containing threatened to explode, but I kept it under control. Cold revenge was more effective than hot anger. I took more screenshots of the bank statements, meticulously documenting every suspicious withdrawal. I didn't know exactly what I'd use this information for, but my gut told me I'd need it. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I blocked Carla's number on my phone. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her elaborate lies, or her attempts at manipulation when she finally discovered I was gone. At 1:30 a.m., they announced boarding for the flight to Lisbon. I got in line with other late-night passengers, most of them looking tired or sleepy. I, on the other hand, felt strangely awake, as if the adrenaline of the situation was keeping me in a state of constant alert. While waiting to board, a thought crossed my mind. When was the last time Carla told me the truth about anything? Was there ever a genuine moment between us? Or was it all an act? The flight was short, less than 2 hours. I sat by the window and watched Madrid disappear below me, the city lights turning into an abstract pattern until the clouds covered everything. I felt like I was leaving behind not just a city, but an entire life, a life built on a foundation of lies. We landed in Lisbon around 3:30 a.m. local time. Portela Airport was even emptier than Madrid's. I collected my suitcase and stepped out into the Portuguese dawn, where the air was slightly cooler and more humid. I took a taxi and asked the driver to take me to any decent hotel in the city center. We ended up at a boutique hotel in the Chiado neighborhood. The night receptionist, an older man with a thick accent, checked me in without asking any awkward questions about my arrival at that hour. The room was small but clean, with a view of a quiet, cobblestone street. I dropped my suitcase on the floor and sat on the bed, finally allowing myself to process everything that had happened in the last 5 hours. I discovered my girlfriend's infidelity, packed my life in a suitcase, left my apartment, and gotten on an international flight, all in a matter of hours. It was almost comical how quickly a life could fall apart and rebuild itself simultaneously. My phone, which I put on airplane mode during the flight, started blowing up with notifications as soon as I reconnected it to the Portuguese network. 14 missed calls from Carla, 22 messages, 3 voicemails. The numbers kept increasing as I looked at the screen. She discovered I was gone. With strangely steady hands, I temporarily unblocked her number and opened the messages without reading them completely, just scanning them superficially. The first ones were still cheerful and carefree, but around message number 8, the tone changed drastically. "Matthias, where are you? I came home, and you're not here. Your clothes are gone. What's happening? Please, answer me. You're scaring me. I saw your note, I don't understand. What did you see on Instagram, Matthias? Answer me. And finally, please, I need to explain. It's not what it looks like. I swear on everything I love. It was a mistake. Please, come home. I read that last message and felt nothing. No compassion, no urge to reply, no desire to hear her explanations. Just a void where love used to be. I blocked her number again and left the phone on the nightstand. I took a shower with almost boiling water, as if I could wash the feeling of betrayal from my skin. Afterwards, I put on clean clothes and lay down on the hotel bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling of an unfamiliar city. I expected not to be able to sleep. I expected my mind to obsessively race over what I discovered. But to my surprise, I fell into a deep and dreamless sleep just minutes after closing my eyes. I woke up at 11 in the morning with the Portuguese sunlight filtering through the curtains. For a confused moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back in a wave. The photo, the kiss, the flight, Lisbon. I sat up in bed and checked my phone. The missed call counter had surpassed 30. The messages were still coming in, but now not just from Carla. Roberto had sent me a message. Man. Carla called me crying at 4 in the morning, asking if I knew where you were. I told her I had no idea. She's desperate. She's also furious. Be careful. My mother had also written. Son, Carla called me saying you disappeared. Are you okay? Please, contact me when you can. And curiously, there was a message from Laura, Carla's friend who'd posted the story about her night at home. Matthias, I know you probably don't want to talk to anyone right now, but I need you to know that not all of us were aware of what Carla was doing. I just found out, and I'm in shock. I'm so sorry. If you need to talk, I'm here. That message surprised me. I decided to reply to her. I needed to know how far Carla's web of lies went. How long did you know about Diego? I wrote directly. The reply came in less than a minute. I found out last night. Sophia saw the photo on Instagram and called me furious because Carla had used us as an alibi. None of us knew she was seeing her ex. She lied to all of us. Patricia's so mad, she told her she never wants to speak to her again. Interesting. So Carla had not only betrayed me, she'd also betrayed her friends by using their names to cover her infidelity. Somehow that made everything even worse. It wasn't an impulsive slip-up. It was an elaborate system of deceit that required planning and multiple lies. I replied to Roberto. I'm in Lisbon. I'm fine. I just need time. Thanks for covering for me last night. To my mother I sent. Mom, I'm fine. I just needed to get away. I'll explain everything when the time's right. Please, don't tell Carla where I am if she contacts you again. After replying to those messages, I forced myself to get up and leave the hotel. I couldn't stay locked in that room, reliving the betrayal over and over again. Lisbon greeted me with a sunny day and a pleasant breeze. I walked aimlessly through the cobblestone streets of Chiado, observing the colorful architecture, listening to the sound of old trams, smelling the scent of codfish and custard tarts coming from the restaurants. At a small cafe near the Santa Catarina viewpoint, I sat down for breakfast. I ordered a coffee and a pastel de nata, the local specialty. As I ate, I took my laptop out of the backpack I'd brought with me. If I was going to be in Lisbon for a while, I needed to catch up on my freelance work. I had 3 projects in progress and couldn't let my professional life collapse along with my personal life. I opened my email and found a message from one of my most important clients, a tech startup in Barcelona that had hired me to redesign their corporate image. The message was urgent. They needed a preliminary presentation by the following Monday. Perfect. Work was exactly what I needed to keep my mind busy. I spent the next 4 hours working at the cafe, losing myself in graphic design in the same way I'd lost myself in Madrid when things with Carla were good. Work had always been my refuge, my way of processing the world, and now it was my lifesaver in the middle of an emotional storm. Around 4 in the afternoon, my stomach reminded me I'd only eaten 1 pastry all day. I closed the laptop and walked towards Barro Alto, following the recommendation of the cafe barista, who'd suggested a traditional Portuguese restaurant. On the way, my phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number with a Spanish prefix. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. Matthias. It was a male voice I didn't recognize immediately. Who's this? It's Diego. My blood froze. Listen, I know you probably want to kill me right now, but I need to talk to you. There are things you don't know about Carla, things you should know before making any decisions. This guy's audacity left me speechless for a moment. The man who'd slept with my girlfriend now wanted to help me with information. How did you get my number? I asked in a cold voice. Carla gave it to me. She's desperate to find you and thought maybe I could. I'm not interested in anything you have to say, Diego. And you can tell Carla to stop using intermediaries. If she has something to say to me, she can write it in a message. Though honestly, there's nothing she can say that'll change what I saw. Matthias, wait, at least let me tell you this. Carla and I have been seeing each other for 8 months. 8 months. She told you it was just girls' night out, but I hung up before he could finish the sentence. 8 months. Almost a whole year of lies and deceit. My hand was trembling as I held the phone. All the rage I'd been containing threatened to overflow. But not here, not in the middle of a Portuguese street surrounded by tourists and locals. I found a quiet alley and leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. 8 months meant that when we celebrated our anniversary in January, when she gave me an expensive wallet and wrote me a letter telling me I was the love of her life, she was already cheating on me. When we spent Valentine's Day in a hotel with an ocean view, when we made plans to travel to Japan in the summer, when we seriously discussed having children in the near future, all while she maintained a parallel relationship with her ex. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a momentary weakness. It was a deliberate and sustained double life. My phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Carla from a different number I hadn't blocked. Matthias, please, Diego had no right to call you. Whatever he told you is a lie. He's trying to ruin us because he's jealous of what we have. Please, come home so we can talk like adults. I love you. None of this changes how much I love you. The hypocrisy of that message hit me like a punch. She loved me, but she'd been cheating on me for 8 months. Diego was lying, but she'd been in his lap in that photo. We needed to talk like adults, but she'd built her relationship with me on a foundation of childish lies. I blocked that number too and called Roberto again. I need you to do something for me, I said when he answered. Anything you need, man. Go to the apartment when Carla's not there and get my things, everything that's mine, my desktop computer, my books, my documents, my grandfather's guitar, everything. Keep it at your place for now. Are you sure you're not coming back? Completely sure. This isn't a temporary separation, Roberto. This is the definitive end. Okay. And if Carla asks me what you're doing in Lisbon, tell her the truth. I'm working, I'm processing, and I'm building a new life. Without her. After hanging up with Roberto, I went into the restaurant the barista had recommended and ordered the full tasting menu. If I was going to process the fact that my 4-year relationship had been a sham for almost a quarter of that time, at least I'd do it with good Portuguese food. For the next 10 days, I established a routine in Lisbon that helped me keep my sanity. I'd wake up early, go for a run in the city's hills, work at different cafes each day, and explore a new neighborhood each afternoon. Lisbon started to feel less like a temporary refuge and more like a potential permanent home. Roberto kept his word and rescued my belongings from the apartment. He sent me pictures of everything packed in boxes in his garage. Carla cried when she saw you were taking your things, he wrote. She said this made everything too real. She should have thought of that before sleeping with her ex for 8 months. I replied. It wasn't my most diplomatic moment, but someone had to tell her. My mother finally got me to tell her the whole story during a video call. She cried, not for Carla, but for me, for the pain I was going through. I always thought she was the one for you, she admitted. But a woman who can lie so elaborately isn't the one for anyone. You did the right thing by leaving, son. Staying would have only prolonged the agony. My mother's words validated me in a way I hadn't expected. Part of me had feared my family would think I'd overreacted, that I should have confronted Carla, given explanations, or tried to save the relationship. But my mother understood that some betrayals are too deep to be forgiven. On the 12th day of my stay in Lisbon, while working at a cafe near São Jorge Castle, I received an email that would change everything. It was from a headhunter at a Lisbon-based design agency. They'd seen my portfolio online and were looking for a creative director. Would I be interested in an interview? I read the email 3 times to make sure it wasn't spam or some kind of scam. But it was legitimate. The agency was called Luz Creativa and had major clients throughout Europe. The salary they mentioned was 30% higher than what I earned as a freelancer in Madrid. And most importantly, it was a chance to build something new, to officially settle in a city that was saving me from sinking into bitterness. I replied to the email immediately, expressing my interest. The interview was scheduled for 2 days later at their offices in Parque das Nações, Lisbon's modern district by the Tagus River. That night, for the first time since my arrival in Portugal, I allowed myself to think about the future instead of the past. Could I really move to Lisbon permanently? Leave behind Madrid, my friends, my previous life? The surprising answer was yes. Not only could I, but I wanted to. Madrid was contaminated with memories of Carla, with places we'd been together, with the humiliation of her betrayal. Lisbon was a blank page, a chance to redefine myself without the weight of a relationship built on lies. I called Roberto to tell him about the job opportunity. "Man, that's amazing," he said with genuine excitement. "But are you sure? Lisbon's not exactly close. Maybe that's exactly what I need. Distance, a completely different new life. And Carla? Does she know this could be permanent? I don't know, and honestly I don't care. I've blocked all her numbers and social media. If she wants something, she can talk to a lawyer about how to divide the apartment's assets." There was a pause before Roberto spoke again. "There's something you should know. Carla posted something on Facebook 2 days ago, a public post asking that if anyone saw you to let her know because she was worried about your safety. She said you'd had a nervous breakdown and disappeared without a trace." The manipulation knew no bounds. Now Carla was trying to paint me as mentally unstable to generate sympathy and social pressure for me to come back. It was a classic move by someone who'd lost control of the narrative and was desperate to regain it. How did people respond? I asked curiously. Several mutual friends commented with concern. But Laura, Patricia, and Sophia, Carla's friends, wrote some pretty revealing comments. Laura said something like, "Maybe you should be more worried about your actions than his location." Sophia was more direct. "People who play with fire can't complain when they get burned." Basically, her own friends publicly exposed her. I couldn't help a small smile of satisfaction. The truth always comes out eventually, and Carla was discovering she couldn't control the narrative when the people who knew her best started talking. "Roberto, if anyone asks you where I am, you can tell them the truth now. I'm in Lisbon, I'm fine, and I'm considering staying permanently. There's no nervous breakdown, no mysterious disappearance, just a man who made the healthy decision to walk away from a toxic relationship." The interview with Luz Creativa was 2 days later, on a Wednesday morning. I put on my best suit, the one I'd packed almost instinctively that night I fled Madrid, and took the metro to Parque das Nações. The district was completely different from the historic Lisbon where I'd been staying. All glass, steel, and modern architecture by the sparkling river. The agency's offices occupied the 12th floor of a building with spectacular views of the Tagus and the Vasco da Gama Bridge. I was greeted by Elena, the HR director, a woman in her 40s with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Matthias, thanks for coming. Your portfolio really impressed us, especially your work with tech startups. It's exactly the kind of experience we're looking for." The interview lasted 2 hours. I met the CEO, 3 members of the creative team, and we reviewed case studies of projects they'd handled. The chemistry was immediate. The team was young, multicultural, and passionate about design in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this profession in the first place. During lunch with the team at a nearby restaurant, one of the senior designers, a Brazilian guy named Marco, asked me directly, "So, what really brings you to Lisbon? It's not common for someone with your experience and clientele in Madrid to just show up here." Everyone at the table fell silent, clearly interested in my answer. I decided to be honest, at least partially. I needed a radical change in my life. Sometimes you realize the place you're in no longer serves you, that you need a complete reset. Lisbon offered me that chance. Marco nodded understandingly. "I totally get it. I came from Sao Paulo 3 years ago for similar reasons. Sometimes the best design you can do is your own life." That phrase stuck with me. The design of my own life. For 4 years I'd been designing a life together with Carla, compromising my desires, adjusting my plans, building around a relationship that turned out to be an illusion. Now I had the chance to design a life just for myself, based on what I really wanted and not what I thought we should want as a couple. At the end of the interview, Elena took me aside. "Matthias, I don't usually do this so quickly, but the team already had a brief meeting while you were at lunch, and they all agreed. We want you at Luz Creativa. The formal offer will arrive in your email this afternoon, but I wanted to tell you personally. Do you think Lisbon could be your home? I looked out the window at the Tagus River, shining under the Portuguese sun. I thought of the cobblestone streets I'd walked for almost 2 weeks, of the cafes where I'd worked, of the peace I'd found in this city. And I thought of Madrid, of an apartment full of contaminated memories and an ex-girlfriend who'd turned our relationship into a farce. Yes, I replied with a certainty that surprised myself. I think Lisbon's already my home. I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the naive hope that Carla would change or that we could fix what was broken, but the real hope that my life could be better, different, more authentic. That afternoon, as I celebrated with a beer by the river, my phone rang with an unknown number. I normally wouldn't have answered, but something made me reply. Matthias, it's Carla's father. His voice was serious, almost formal. We'd never been particularly close, but we'd always treated each other with mutual respect. Mr. Ramirez, I replied cautiously. Listen, I won't waste your time. Carla finally told me the whole truth about what happened, about Diego, about the lies, about everything. And I need you to know that her mother and I are ashamed. We didn't raise our daughter to treat someone this way. I didn't expect that call or that honesty. I appreciate you telling me, sir. Carla is. She's not okay. I'm not saying this for you to get back with her, because after what she did I completely understand why you left. But she's seeing a therapist. She's cut off all contact with Diego, and she's trying to understand why she sabotaged a good relationship. With all due respect, Mr. Ramirez, that's no longer my responsibility or my concern. There was a sigh on the other end of the line. I know, and you're right. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in her family approves of what she did, and that if you ever need anything, a job reference or whatever, you can count on me. That conversation was unexpected, but somehow healing. Not everyone had blindly taken Carla's side. Even her own father recognized the magnitude of her betrayal. 3 days later, I received the formal offer from Luz Creativa by email. The salary was even better than they'd initially mentioned. It included relocation benefits, and I'd start in 2 weeks. There was no reason to hesitate. I digitally signed the contract that same afternoon. Then I called my landlord in Madrid and informed him I wouldn't be renewing my part of the rental agreement when it expired in 2 months. He could work directly with Carla for her to take over the whole apartment or find a new roommate. It was no longer my problem. I also hired a lawyer in Madrid recommended by Roberto to handle the division of assets and ensure there were no legal or financial ties left with Carla. The lawyer, an efficient man named Javier Torres, reviewed my situation and reassured me. Since you weren't married and had no joint property, the separation will be relatively simple. And the apartment furniture? Javier asked. She can keep everything. I don't want anything that reminds me of that time in my life. Just make sure to document that I'm voluntarily relinquishing those assets so she can't claim anything later. My new life in Lisbon began to take shape quickly. I found a 1-bedroom apartment in Alfama, Lisbon's oldest neighborhood, with views of the red-tiled rooftops and the river in the distance. It was smaller than the apartment I'd shared with Carla, but it was completely mine. Every piece of furniture I bought, every decorating decision I made reflected only my tastes, not a compromise between 2 people. Roberto sent my belongings via an international shipping company. When the boxes arrived at my new apartment, it was like receiving pieces of my identity I'd forgotten existed. My guitar, my books, my photography equipment I hadn't used in years because Carla said it took up too much space. Things I'd sacrificed or put away to keep the peace in a relationship that turned out not to be worth any sacrifice. My first day at Luz Creativa was exactly what I needed. The team welcomed me with enthusiasm. I was assigned a major project from day one and felt valued for my skills, not for being part of a couple. It was refreshing to be just Matthias again, not Matthias and Carla. During the first few weeks, I systematically removed all traces of Carla from my digital life. I archived 4 years of photos in a hidden folder on my hard drive, not because I wanted to relive them, but because someday I might want to remember who I was during that period of my life. But I deleted them from all my social media. I deleted our shared music from Spotify. I changed the passwords to all the accounts we'd shared. A month after arriving in Lisbon, I finally unblocked Carla's number. Not because I wanted to communicate with her, but because the time had come to have one last conversation. I needed to close that chapter definitively, not with drama, but with clarity. I sent her a brief message. Carla, I've hired a lawyer to handle the formal separation of our lives. His name is Javier Torres. His contact information is CC'd on this message. All future communication regarding division of assets or legal matters must go through him. There's nothing more for us to discuss. I wish you the best in your life, but it's no longer a life that includes any connection with me. The reply came less than 5 minutes later. It was long, emotional, full of apologies and promises of change. She said she'd ended everything with Diego, that she'd been in therapy, that she understood her mistakes, that I was the love of her life, and she'd spend the rest of her existence regretting losing me. I read the entire message with emotional distance, as if I were reading someone else's story. And when I finished, I simply replied, Javier Torres will handle everything. Take care, Carla. Then I blocked her again, this time knowing it was for good. 2 months after settling in Lisbon, my life had taken a course I never imagined possible. At Luz Creativa, I was not only excelling professionally, but I'd found a team that felt like a chosen family. Marco, the Brazilian designer, had become one of my best friends. We'd go out to explore Lisbon's art scene, attend exhibitions, and spend hours discussing design in small bars in Barro Alto. One Friday afternoon, after a particularly intense work week, the team decided to celebrate at a bar by the river. Elena, the HR director, approached me with a beer in her hand and a knowing smile. Matthias, enough time has passed, and I think I can ask you this without being invasive. What really brought you to Lisbon? And don't give me that diplomatic answer of, I needed a change. We all know there's a deeper story. The alcohol and the relaxed atmosphere made me lower my guard. For the first time since I arrived in Portugal, I told the whole story. The supposed girls' night out, the Instagram photo, the kiss, the 8 months of infidelity, the late-night flight, everything. The team listened in silence, and when I finished, Marco broke the tension. Man, you're a damn hero. Most guys would have stayed, would have begged for explanations, would have tried to fix the relationship. You just packed your bags and reinvented yourself in another country. That takes a giant pair of balls. Elena raised her beer. To Matthias, who showed us that the best decisions are sometimes made in the worst circumstances. Everyone toasted, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine belonging. Not the forced belonging of pretending everything was fine in a broken relationship, but the real connection with people who valued me for who I really was. That night, as I walked back to my apartment through the streets of Alfama, my phone rang. It was Roberto. Man, I need to tell you something, and you're not gonna like it. My stomach tightened. What happened? Carla showed up at my house today. She just showed up crying, asking me to tell her exactly where you were in Lisbon. I told her I didn't have that specific information, that I only knew you were in the city. Then she started screaming that all of you, her friends, her family, had abandoned her when she needed you most. What did you tell her? I reminded her she was the one who destroyed her life with her decisions, that you didn't abandon her. You just left an unsustainable situation. But Matthias, there's something else. She said she's going to Lisbon to find you, that she needs to talk to you face to face to have proper closure. The idea of Carla showing up in Lisbon, invading the safe space I'd built, filled me with rage. She can't just show up here. Lisbon has over 500,000 inhabitants. She's not going to find me walking down the street. I know, but I thought you should be warned. Maybe you should consider getting a restraining order or something. After hanging up with Roberto, I sat on my small balcony looking at the Lisbon lights. Did I really have to go to that extreme? A restraining order against someone I'd planned to spend my life with? But then I remembered the words of my therapist, a Portuguese psychologist named Dora Silva, whom I'd started seeing weekly. Matthias, she told me in our most recent session, the fact that someone was important in your life doesn't give them a perpetual right to your emotional or physical space. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary for your sanity. The next morning I contacted Javier, my lawyer in Madrid, and explained the situation. He was direct. I can send a formal cease and desist letter. It's not as strong as a restraining order, but it legally establishes that any unsolicited attempt at contact could result in more serious legal action. Do it, I replied without hesitation. 3 days later, Javier confirmed the letter had been personally delivered to Carla. Her response, as he told me, had been a mix of tears and disbelief. He can't be serious, she told the messenger. I just want to talk to him. But I was completely serious. There was no possible conversation that could change what had happened or how I felt about it. Every message she tried to send, every attempt at contact only reinforced something I already knew. Carla didn't respect my boundaries. She never had, and she probably never would. Work became my refuge and my renewed passion. I was leading a major project for a German tech company, designing their entire visual identity from scratch. It was the kind of work that made me lose track of time, that filled me with energy instead of draining it. Elena commented in a meeting that my productivity and creativity were exceptional, that the team had never worked better since my arrival. But it wasn't all work. I started exploring hobbies I'd abandoned during my relationship with Carla. I picked up photography again, buying a new camera and spending my weekends capturing the unique light of Lisbon. I joined a hiking group that explored the Sintra Mountains every Saturday. I took Portuguese classes because if I was going to live in this country, I wanted to master it properly. One October afternoon, while editing photos in a cafe in Principe Real, a woman approached my table. She was about my age, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail with a kind smile. "Excuse me, are you a professional photographer?" she asked in Portuguese with a slight accent. "Semi-professional," I replied in my still imperfect Portuguese. "It's more of a hobby than my main job. Your photos are incredible. I'm a curator at a small gallery here in the neighborhood, and we're looking for local photographers for an exhibition next month. Would you be interested?" Her name was Ines. And for the next hour we talked about photography, art, and Lisbon. She was an art restorer. She'd grown up in Porto, but had been in Lisbon for 5 years. There was something about her energy that was refreshing, unpretentious, genuinely passionate about her work. "Are you new to Lisbon?" she asked me as we had a second coffee. "I arrived 3 months ago. I came for work, but I stayed because this city saved me in a way." Ines looked at me with curiosity, but didn't press for more details. Instead, she simply said, "Lisbon has that magic. It welcomes those who need to start over." We exchanged contacts, and she invited me to visit her gallery to discuss the possible exhibition. When she left, I realized I'd spent a full hour without thinking once about Carla, without feeling the weight of betrayal, without the phantom pain of a dead relationship. It was real progress. That night, as I had dinner in my apartment, I received an email that chilled my blood. It was from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject said, "Please read this. It's important." Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was from Diego. "Matthias, I know you should probably delete this email without reading it, but I need to tell you something important. Carla is obsessed with finding you. She's hired a private investigator to locate you in Lisbon. I thought you should know. I know I was part of the problem, and I carry that guilt every day, but she's crossing a dangerous line. Be careful." My first reaction was rage. A private investigator. What level of invasion was that? But my second reaction was more calculated. If Carla was going to such extremes, I needed to protect myself legally in a more serious way. I immediately called Javier in Madrid. It was 11 p.m., but he answered. "Javier, I need a full restraining order. I have evidence she's trying to locate me through invasive means. Forward me that email immediately. This changes things. With evidence of persistent harassment and hiring investigators, I can argue for an international restraining order." While Javier worked on the legal aspects, I took my own precautions. I changed my privacy settings on all social media. I asked my landlord not to disclose my address to anyone without my explicit authorization. I informed my team at Luz Creativa about the situation, without going into full details, but making it clear that if anyone asked about me, they shouldn't confirm anything. Elena, always protective, was direct. "If she shows up here, we'll call the police. No one harasses our team." 5 days later, the confirmation arrived. The restraining order had been approved. Carla was forbidden from contacting me directly or indirectly, approaching me within 100 meters if we happened to be in the same place, or trying to obtain information about my location through third parties. Violating the order would result in criminal charges. Javier sent me the official documentation. This should stop her, Matthias. And if it doesn't, there'll be real legal consequences. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I had taken full control of the situation. I was no longer a man running from his ex, but someone who had established clear boundaries and backed them up legally. The exhibition at Ines's gallery was a month later. I had selected 20 of my best photographs of Lisbon. Sunrises over the Tagus, cobblestone streets of Alfama, faces of locals and markets, the colorful architecture of Barrio Alto. On opening night, the small space was crowded, and to my surprise I sold 5 photographs. Ines approached me with a glass of wine. "You're a natural talent, Matthias. People connect with your images because you capture not just the city, but the emotion of being in it." "Maybe it's because I'm rediscovering the emotion of living myself," I replied honestly. We talked for hours that night. After the guests left, Ines told me about her own past, a marriage that had ended 2 years ago when she discovered her husband had a second family in Coimbra. Another person who had been deeply betrayed and had found in Lisbon a place to heal. "Do you know what's ironic?" she said as we were closing the gallery. "For a long time I thought my ex had ruined my life, but now I see he freed me from a lie. If it hadn't been exposed, I would have continued living that farce indefinitely." Her words resonated deeply with me. That was exactly what Carla had done too. Unknowingly, she had freed me from wasting more years in a fundamentally dishonest relationship. "Would you like to have dinner with me next week?" I asked with a courage that surprised myself. Not necessarily as a date, just as 2 people who understand what it's like to start over. Ines smiled. "I'd love that. And Matthias, don't be afraid of it being a date. We both deserve the chance to trust again eventually." That night, walking back to my apartment, I stopped at the Santa Catarina viewpoint. Lisbon stretched out before me, lit up and beautiful. For months ago, I'd arrived in this city as a broken man, fleeing a betrayal I thought would define me forever. But instead, Lisbon had given me something much more valuable than revenge or closure. It had given me the chance to rediscover myself. I took out my phone and for the first time in months opened the folder where I'd archived all the photos of my life with Carla. I looked at them with a new emotional distance. That was me, but it wasn't me anymore. That life was over, not with drama or confrontation, but with the simple decision to walk towards something better. I deleted the folder completely. I didn't need those reminders. I had new memories to create, new photographs to take, a new life to design. My phone vibrated with a message from Roberto. "Man, I thought you should know. Carla moved out of Madrid. I heard she went to Barcelona. I think she's finally trying to move on too." I read the message without feeling anything in particular. Not relief, not satisfaction, not sadness, just a peaceful neutrality. Where Carla chose to rebuild her life was no longer my concern. Our paths had separated permanently, and I was at peace with that. 6 months after arriving in Lisbon, my life had reached a stability I hadn't known since before meeting Carla. At Luz Creativa, I'd been promoted to senior creative director, leading projects for clients across Europe. My Portuguese was now fluent, with just a slight Spanish accent that the locals found charming. And most importantly, I'd learned to be alone without feeling lonely. Ines and I had started seeing each other regularly. It wasn't a formal relationship yet. We were both cautious after our past experiences, but there was a genuine connection that was growing naturally, without pressure or unrealistic expectations. We'd have dinner together 2 or 3 times a week, explore museums on Sundays, share our creative work. It was refreshing to be with someone who understood the need to build trust slowly. One March afternoon, while working from a cafe in Chiado, I received a call from a Spanish number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won. "Matthias." It was a female voice I took a moment to place. "Laura." "Yes, it's me. I know this is strange after all this time, but I needed to call you. Do you have a few minutes?" I moved away from the cafe noise to a quieter street. Laura, Carla's friend who'd been one of the first to publicly confront her, had no reason to contact me unless it was important. "What's up, Matthias? I'm so sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know something. Carla has been telling people a completely distorted version of what happened between you. She's saying you left because you couldn't handle her being successful, that you felt intimidated by her independence, that you made up the stuff about Diego because you were paranoid and jealous." I felt a spark of anger, but quickly controlled it. And people believe her. Some do, especially those who don't know her well. But those of us who were there, who saw the photos, who know the truth, we don't believe her at all. Patricia, Sophia, and I have been correcting that narrative every time we hear it. But I thought you should know in case you need to protect yourself legally. Thanks for telling me, Laura. I appreciate your loyalty, though I don't deserve it. It wasn't your fight. Of course it is. Friendship means something to me. And although you were technically my friend's boyfriend, You were always honest and decent with all of us. Carla betrayed that, and I'm not going to be an accomplice to her lies. After hanging up, I called Javier. I explained the defamation situation. It's difficult to legally prove defamation in personal cases like this, he admitted. But I have a better idea. Remember all those screenshots you took? The Instagram photos, the messages, the bank statements showing her suspicious withdrawals? It's time to create a complete and dated record of all that evidence. For what? Because if Carla continues to defame you publicly, especially if she tries to affect your professional reputation, you'll have solid documentation to refute any accusations. I'm not suggesting you publish anything, just that you be prepared to defend yourself if necessary. I followed Javier's advice and compiled everything into a digital document with timestamps, saved in the cloud, and shared with Roberto as a backup. I didn't plan to use it, but having that protection gave me peace of mind. The following weeks brought an unexpected tranquility. The German project I'd been working on won a European Design Award, raising Luz Creativa's profile and cementing my reputation in the industry. Elena called me into her office one Friday afternoon. Matthias, the management team has been discussing the agency's expansion. We want to open an office in Porto, and we need someone we trust to lead it. Would you be a minority partner with a share in the profits? Would you be interested? It was an incredible opportunity, but it would also mean more responsibility and possibly less time for my personal life, which was finally flourishing. Can I think about it over the weekend? Of course. But, Matthias, I want you to know something. In the 7 years I've been with this agency, I've never seen anyone transform a team and raise the quality of our work as much as you have. Whatever your decision, you're invaluable to us. That night, during dinner with Ines at a small seafood restaurant in Cais do Soter, I told her about the offer. And what's stopping you? She asked as we shared a seafood cataplana. Honestly, fear of repeating old patterns. 4 years with Carla, I put my career on a pedestal. I worked obsessively, and that created emotional distance that she used to justify her cheating. I'm not saying her infidelity was my fault, but I contributed to creating an environment where we grew apart. Ines put her hand on mine. Matthias, that's self-awareness, not guilt. And there's a big difference between working obsessively to escape problems in your relationship and working passionately because you love what you do. You're now the second option. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. I've seen how you talk about your work with genuine joy, not the desperation of someone hiding. And because when you're with me, you're fully present. I never feel like you're thinking about work or that you'd rather be somewhere else. Her words made me reflect deeply. She was right. My relationship with work had fundamentally changed. It was no longer an escape, but an authentic expression of my skills and passion. Besides, Ines continued with a mischievous smile. Porto is only a 3-hour train ride away. If you decide to move there, it's not like you're going to another continent. On Monday, I accepted Elena's offer. The transition would take 3 months, during which I'd help hire and train the Porto team while maintaining my responsibilities in Lisbon. It was challenging but exciting. 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting with clients at a luxury hotel in downtown Lisbon when I saw her. Carla was in the hotel lobby, talking to someone near the reception. My heart raced for a moment, not with longing, but with the sheer awkwardness of running into my past without warning. I ended my meeting quickly, thanked the clients, and prepared to leave through a different exit. But before I could, she saw me. Our eyes met across the lobby. I saw her face go through a sequence of emotions. Surprise, pain, hope, desperation. She started walking towards me. I thought of the restraining order, of how I could make the situation legally complicated, but something in her expression stopped me. It wasn't the manipulative, controlling Carla who'd tried to track me down obsessively. It was a broken version, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and a fragility I'd never seen in her. She stopped about 3 meters away, technically respecting the restraining order's limit. Matthias, her voice was barely audible. Please, just 5 minutes. After that, never again, I promise. All logic told me to leave, that I owed her nothing, that this conversation could bring no good. But there was something in her completely defeated demeanor that made me hesitate. I looked around the lobby. It was public, there were plenty of people, there was no real danger. 5 minutes, I finally said. Here, in this lobby. And after this it's over, Carla, for good. We sat in opposite armchairs in a corner of the lobby. She kept her hands in her lap, not trying to touch me or get closer. I came to Lisbon for work, she began, as if she needed to justify her presence. I wasn't looking for you, I swear. Seeing the restraining order made me finally understand I'd crossed unforgivable lines. I said nothing, just waited. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me or take me back. We both know that's never going to happen, and honestly, I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I've been in intensive therapy for these months, not as an excuse, but trying to understand why I destroyed something good. And I asked in a neutral voice. My therapist says I have patterns of self-sabotage that come from my childhood, that when things get too real or too good, I unconsciously destroy them because I don't feel worthy of them. With Diego, it was safe, it was chaotic, and had no future, so there were no expectations I could disappoint. With you, there was a real future, a real commitment, and that terrified me. Carla, I appreciate that you're working on yourself. Really, but this doesn't change anything. I can't be part of your healing process. You need to do that work for yourself, not in the hope that I'll come back. Tears started running down her cheeks. I know. I just needed to tell you in person, not by message or through intermediaries. I needed to look you in the eyes and tell you I'm sorry, that you didn't deserve any of my deceit, that you were the best man I've ever known and I was too stupid and broken to value it. I felt a strange mix of emotions, compassion for her pain, but also absolute firmness in that this didn't change my decision. I forgive you, Carla, I said finally, and saw shock in her eyes. Not because what you did is okay, nor because I want any kind of relationship with you in the future. I forgive you because carrying anger towards you only hurts me. I forgive you so I can move on completely. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or reconciling. I understand, she whispered. Are you happy here in Lisbon? Happier than I've been in years, I said. This city gave me the chance to rebuild myself on my own terms. Carla nodded slowly. I'm glad. Really, you deserve all the happiness in the world. She stood up from the armchair. Thanks for giving me these 5 minutes. I know I didn't deserve them. I wish you all the best, Matthias. I hope you find someone who values what I was too foolish to value. I watched her walk towards the hotel exit, her shoulders slumped, dragging a small suitcase. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a bigger part felt a deep peace. This was the real closure, not with drama or revenge, but with quiet honesty and clear boundaries. I left the hotel and called Ines. Are you free tonight? I need to tell you something. That night, in her apartment full of plants and art, I told her about the encounter with Carla. Ines listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she simply said, How'd you feel? Free, I replied, surprised at my own voice. Completely free. For months, part of me dreaded that encounter. I thought it'd reignite all the pain. But seeing her today, hearing her, only confirmed I made the right decision. I feel nothing for her, not love, not hate, just peaceful neutrality. Ines came over and kissed me softly. That's real healing, Matthias. And it means you're ready to build something new without the shadows of the past. That night, as Ines slept beside me, I looked at her apartment ceiling and reflected on the journey of the last year. It had begun with a devastating betrayal, an impulsive escape to another country, and months of rebuilding myself from scratch. But every step, every decision to protect and prioritize myself had led me here, to a life that was authentically mine. Lisbon was no longer a temporary refuge, it was my home. Luz Creativa wasn't just a job, it was a professional family that valued me. Ines wasn't a replacement for Carla. She was someone completely new with whom I was building something based on honesty and mutual respect. And I was no longer the Matthias who'd lived with Carla, compromising his needs and accepting crumbs of genuine affection. I was someone stronger, more aware, more complete. My phone vibrated with a message from Roberto. Man, I heard Carla was in Lisbon. Everything okay? I replied. Everything perfect. We talked. There was real closure, and now that chapter's completely closed. How are things in Madrid? Missing you, but proud of you. You've done something few have the courage to do. Completely reinvent yourself. I have to visit you soon to see this new life of yours. Come whenever you want. I'll show you why Lisbon is magical. I closed my phone and cuddled next to Ines, feeling a deep gratitude for the turn my life had taken. Carla's infidelity, which I once thought would destroy me, ended up being the catalyst for the best transformation of my life. It forced me to face truths about myself, about what I really wanted, about the kind of life I deserved to live. A year after that night, I saw Carla's photo on Instagram and decided to change my life completely. I found myself in a situation I never would have imagined possible. The Luz Creativa office in Porto had opened its doors 3 months ago, and I was splitting my time between both Portuguese cities, enjoying the duality this offered. Porto with its industrial and artistic energy, Lisbon with its golden light and more relaxed pace. Ines had been incredibly understanding with my demanding schedule. Our relationship had naturally evolved into something more serious, though we both carefully maintained our independence. We learned from our past experiences that healthy love doesn't require total fusion, but two complete individuals who choose to share their lives. One April afternoon, while organizing a joint exhibition of photography and art restoration with Ines at a gallery in Belém, I received an unexpected email. It was from an international design magazine requesting an interview about my work and my career path. They'd seen the award-winning German project and wanted to do a profile on designers who are redefining European creativity from non-traditional cities. During the interview, which was conducted by video call a week later, the journalist asked me a question that took me by surprise. Matthias, your portfolio shows a drastic change in style and focus about a year ago. What prompted that evolution? I hesitated for a moment, considering how much to reveal. I finally decided to be honest, though without names or specific details. A year ago, I went through a devastating breakup that forced me to reconsider who I was and what I wanted from life. I moved to Lisbon with no concrete plan, just the need to distance myself from a toxic situation. That impulsive decision turned out to be the best one I've ever made. Lisbon gave me the space to rediscover my creative voice without the limitations of previous expectations or commitments that were suffocating me. Would you say adversity improved your work? I'd say adversity forced me to be honest with myself, and that honesty translated into more authentic work. When you design from a place of personal truth, instead of trying to please or fit into others' expectations, the result resonates differently with people. The interview was published 2 weeks later in the magazine's digital edition. Roberto sent me a message. Man, you just got featured in one of the most important design magazines in the world. Your ex must be biting her nails with rage. But honestly, what Carla thought or felt no longer occupied space in my mind. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to Barcelona, that she was in a new relationship, and that she'd apparently continued with her therapy. I was genuinely glad she was working on herself, but her life no longer intersected with mine in any significant way. What did occupy my attention was the most ambitious project of my career. A Dublin-based tech company had contacted me directly to design the complete identity of their new platform, a contract worth more than I'd earned in the entire previous year. It was the ultimate validation that my career had not only survived my impulsive move to Portugal, but had flourished in ways I never would have achieved by staying in my Madrid comfort zone. In June, Roberto finally fulfilled his promise to visit me. We spent a long weekend exploring Lisbon, and one night, as we were having dinner at a restaurant with a view of the Tagus, he looked at me with a serious expression. I need to tell you something, and I want you to know I don't judge your decision, whatever your answer is. You sound worrying. What's up? I ran into Carla 2 weeks ago in Madrid. She was visiting from Barcelona. She asked about you, how you were, if you'd met someone new. I felt a small pang, not of pain, but of curiosity. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth, that you're doing incredibly well, that your career's at its best, that you've built a whole life here in Portugal. I didn't mention Ines because I didn't feel it was her right to know. But Matthias, she looked devastated, not in a manipulative way, but genuinely shattered by the dimension of what she lost. And how am I supposed to feel about that? Roberto shrugged. I don't know. I just thought you should know. Not for you to feel bad for her or reconsider anything, but because I think there's power in knowing that your decision to leave, to rebuild, was absolutely the right one. She lost someone extraordinary, and she's living with those consequences. You, on the other hand, gained an authentic life. That conversation stayed with me for days, not because it stirred up dormant feelings for Carla, but because it made me reflect on the concept of consequences and growth. We'd both paid prices for what happened. She lost a relationship that could have been her future. I lost 4 years and my naive trust in the people I loved. But while she carried the guilt of her decisions, I had transformed my pain into growth. In August, Ines and I decided to take a significant step. We rented an apartment together in the Estrella neighborhood, a compromise between Lisbon and Porto, where we could both keep our jobs. It was a bright space with a balcony overlooking a quiet garden, completely different from the apartment I'd shared with Carla in Madrid. The first night in our new home, as we were unpacking boxes, Ines found a photo that had slipped between my books. It was of Carla and me, taken during a beach vacation 3 years ago. We were both smiling at the camera, apparently happy, completely unaware of how everything would fall apart. "Do you want to keep it?" Ines asked without judgment in her voice. I looked at the photo for a long moment. That was me, but it also wasn't me. That version of Matthias didn't know betrayal, didn't have the scars I now carried. But he was also more naive, more willing to ignore warning signs, more inclined to compromise his needs to keep the peace. "No," I finally replied. "That person and that life don't exist anymore. I don't need a photo to remember the lessons I learned." I tore up the photo and threw it in the trash, not with anger, but with a quiet finality. It was the last physical remnant of that relationship, and letting it go felt liberating. In September, something unexpected happened. Laura, Carla's friend who'd warned me about the defamation months ago, wrote to me again. "Matthias, I know you probably don't want to know anything about Carla, and I completely understand if you just delete this message, but I felt you should know this. Carla got engaged 2 weeks ago to a man she met in Barcelona. Her social media is full of pictures proclaiming she's finally found true love. And honestly, after everything she did to you, her hypocrisy infuriates me." I read the message several times, expecting to feel something. Pain, anger, jealousy, something. But all I felt was a slight curiosity followed by complete indifference. I replied, "Laura, I appreciate you thinking of me, but honestly I hope Carla has found genuine happiness. Our chapter closed a long time ago. I wish her the best." And I meant it. There was no sarcasm or hidden bitterness in those words. I genuinely hoped Carla had grown from her mistakes and found something real. Her happiness or unhappiness had no impact on mine. That night I told Ines about the message. She hugged me tightly. "That's real maturity, Matthias. You're not apathetic or bitter. You've just moved on so completely that her life doesn't affect you emotionally anymore." In October, exactly a year after opening the Porto office, Luz Creativa offered me a full partnership in the agency. I was no longer just a creative director or a minority partner, but an equal owner, with a say in all strategic decisions. It was a recognition that validated not only my work, but my decision to bet on myself when all seemed lost. During the celebration dinner with the whole team, Elena gave a speech that moved me more than I expected. When Matthias came to us a little over a year ago, we saw talent and potential, but what we didn't anticipate was how he would transform not only our work, but our culture. He taught us that real creativity comes from authenticity, that the best designs are born when you have the courage to be honest about who you are and what you represent. Matthias is not only an exceptional designer, he's a reminder that personal crises can become catalysts for a greatness we never would have achieved in our comfort zone. Those words resonated deeply. My personal crisis, Carla's betrayal, the late-night flight to Lisbon, everything that seemed devastating at the time, had been exactly the catalyst I needed to become the most complete version of myself. In November, during a work trip to Berlin, I found myself walking through a contemporary art gallery. One of the exhibitions featured works on the concept of transformation through adversity. One piece in particular captivated me. A series of photographs showing the same landscape after a forest fire, documenting its regeneration over 2 years. The last image showed a completely new forest, different from the original, but just as beautiful, perhaps more so. I stood looking at those images for a long time, seeing my own story reflected in them. The fire of infidelity had ravaged my previous life, but from those ashes something new had grown, a stronger career, more authentic relationships, a deeper understanding of myself and what I deserved. When I returned to Lisbon, I found Ines preparing dinner in our apartment. The scene was so ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Soft music playing in the background, the smell of spices in the air, the sunset light filtering through the windows. It was the kind of moment I used to take for granted with Carla, but now I appreciate it deeply because I understood its fragility and its value. What are you thinking about? Ines asked, noticing my contemplative expression. How the worst thing that ever happened to me ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. How a moment of betrayal led me to a life of authenticity. Ines smiled. Life has a strange way of putting us through what we need to get to where we need to be. That night, as we were going to bed, I received one last message from Roberto. Man, I just saw your new photography exhibition listed in a Lisbon cultural magazine. Lisbon, the city that saved me. I can't wait to see it when it opens next month. I'm so proud of who you've become. The exhibition was a personal project I'd been preparing for months. 50 photographs documenting my first year in Lisbon. Not just the city, but my emotional transformation, captured through landscapes, faces, and moments. It was the story of how a broken man came to a strange city and found not just refuge, but rebirth. On opening night in December, the space was filled with people who were now part of my life. The Luz Creativa team, friends I'd made in Lisbon, Ines, of course, and surprisingly Roberto and my mother, who'd flown in from Spain for the occasion. My mother approached me with tears in her eyes after walking through the entire exhibition. Son, these photographs tell the story of your healing. As a mother, it's painful to know what you had to go through, but it's also beautiful to see how you turned that pain into art, into growth, into a life that's authentically yours. When everyone had left, and only Ines and I remained in the empty gallery, she took my hand. Do you know which is my favorite photo of the whole exhibition? Which one? The one of the man sitting alone at the Santa Catarina viewpoint at sunrise. He's with his back to the camera, looking at the city, and you can feel both the loneliness and the hope in that image. That photo perfectly captures the moment of transition between who you were and who you're becoming. She was right. That photo, taken during my second week in Lisbon, when I was still processing the betrayal but starting to glimpse the possibility of something better, perfectly encapsulated my journey. Now, standing in that gallery with the woman I loved, surrounded by visual evidence of my transformation, I felt a deep gratitude. Not for the betrayal itself. I'd never be grateful for the deceit and lies, but for the courage I found to leave, for the resilience I discovered in myself, for the authentic life I built from scratch. My phone vibrated with one last notification before I put it on silent for the night. It was an email from a university in Lisbon inviting me to give a talk on creativity and reinvention to design students. The proposed topic was perfect. How adversity can catalyze your best work. I smiled as I put my phone away. I had a story to tell, lessons to share, not from a place of bitterness, but of genuine growth. The story of a man who saw his girlfriend being unfaithful on Instagram, packed a suitcase, and left the country that same night. And how that impulsive decision turned out to be the first step towards the best version of himself. Lisbon shone outside the gallery windows, its lights reflecting on the Tagus. This city had welcomed me when I arrived broken and had given me the space to rebuild myself. But the real transformation didn't come from the city. It came from the decision to bet on myself, to believe I deserved something better, to have the courage to start over without a safety net. Ready to go home? I asked Ines. Always. She replied with that smile that reminded me why it was worth having gone through all the previous pain. As we walked through the Lisbon night, my mind reflected on the journey of the last year, from devastation to reconstruction, from betrayal to renewed trust, from the man who was cheated on to the man who chose his own happiness over clinging to a dead relationship. Carla's infidelity didn't define me. My response to it did. And that response, leaving without looking back, rebuilding without revenge, healing without bitterness, was what truly mattered. Lisbon was no longer just a city where I lived. It was the symbol of my ability to transform crisis into opportunity, to turn the most painful ending into the most promising beginning. And as I walked hand in hand with Ines towards our apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace with my past, excitement for my present, and absolute confidence in my future. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that completely changed your life? Have you discovered that sometimes the most painful betrayals lead us to the best destinations? I'd like to know your opinion on this story. Do you think Matthias did the right thing by leaving without confronting? Or should we always seek closure before disappearing? Leave me your opinion in the comments. If this story resonated with you in any way, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for joining me to the end of this story.